Now, one of the most interesting things about The Hobbit is, as I said earlier, it's one of the great children's stories. But Tolkien also, later in his life, wanted to retell The Hobbit for adults. And this is exactly what Peter Jackson is trying to do in his films. He's taking up a children's story and turning it into a film for adult audiences and making it much darker than the story of the dragon, with bringing in elements from the later story of The Lord of the Rings. In fact, there's quite a long time period between writing of The Hobbit and writing of The Lord of the Rings. Tolkien finished much of the first draft of The Hobbit early in the 1930s, but it wasn't until halfway through the 1950s that The Lord of the Rings was published. Tolkien spent 11 or 12 years writing The Lord of the Rings, a painstaking task where he had to work on things like the phases of the moon and get the narrative working consistently with various events taking part in different places, the stories diverging and so on. And all the time he was encouraged in this task by his friend C.S. Lewis, who kept encouraging him to finish the task. And even when he finished it, he kind of fiddled around with who would publish the book. And he wanted very much for his other material to be published at the same time as The Lord of the Rings, which would have been an absolute nightmare and an impossibility for any publisher. Unfortunately, he found a sympathetic publisher who was willing to lose money on publishing The Lord of the Rings, as they thought, which is now seems the supreme irony. Now, with the earlier Lord of the Rings films and with The Hobbit, Peter Jackson and the actors very much want to keep to the spirit of the books. The books come first. They were all, The Hobbit and The Lord of the Rings were extremely popular around the world before the films came along. And in fact, without that fact, the films wouldn't have been possible. There would be no way that the money could have been raised to make the films. So the thing to do is to read The Hobbit before, if you can, before seeing the films. Or even seeing part two. Although The Hobbit is written for children, it's written in a very detailed and rich way, with wonderful descriptions of the Misty Mountains and the tunnels underneath that, and the vast area of Mirkwood and the Lonely Mountain and Lake Town, all these wonderful places that Tolkien captures in his beautiful descriptions and dialogues, and the way that he portrays the dwarves with his rich knowledge of ancient myth and so on.